Take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
CannabisRadio.com presents The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Hey, this is great, man.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Wednesday, July 20th, 2016, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Welcome to the show. We are coming to you live from beautiful, legal Potland, Oregon, on the banks of the Willamette River, 26 floors up, overlooking a nice day, partly cloudy. Actually, I'm going to call it partly sunny. I can see a lot of blue sky today, and I can see all the way out to Mount Hood, so it is a beautiful day. And we've got plenty of marijuana news to bring to you today. In our Government at Work segment, we're going to get to that at about 1:30 today. We're going to take a look at a story that I found up on, what was this? The Mercury News, San Jose Mercury News. What happens to medical marijuana if recreational use becomes legal in California? And actually, it was the Orange County Register that originally published this. And it details the concerns of medical cannabis patients in the state of California who fear that Prop 64, the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, is somehow going to upset their apple cart. It's going to make their lives more unbearable. And the primary objection they've got is taxes that are going to be charged to recreational and medical consumers alike. We'll talk about that in the Government at Work segment. Right after that, we'll get to the Radical Rant, and you get a special preview today of my exclusive feature article for Freedom Leaf magazine, Ganja and the Gridiron. The NFL has a marijuana problem. And we'll bring you that article in the Radical Rant. I'm going to give you basically an overview of the NFL, its treatment of marijuana, and the players who use it. So stay tuned for that coming up at the end of the show in the Radical Rant. In the first half hour, we will get to some drug war data mining. There's a new study out. Hold on to your hats, folks. A new study that says drinking booze makes you aggro and smoking pot makes you mellow. Man, where do I get the grant money for a study like that? How do we figure that out? This just in, the Pope is Catholic and bears do defecate in the woods. Also on the show today, we'll go behind the headlines in our Cannabis Focus and take a look at Willie Nelson and his new brand, Willie's Reserve, which is looking to debut in Washington State. Was it today or this week? I'll have to get the details for you, but this month there will be Willie's Reserve brand cannabis in Washington State pot shops. Next month they'll be in Colorado pot shops. I've got the list of some of the pot shops you'll be able to find Willie's Reserve in Washington State, so stay tuned for that. That's coming right after the Cannabis Radio News. We got a lot of headlines today to go over. A terrible poll coming out of Massachusetts that casts a pall on marijuana legalization. We've got a court date in Arizona for determining whether legalization goes forward in that state. We've got the suspension of medical licenses for 4 doctors in Colorado. We'll tell you why. We've got a look at Ricky Williams, who says he has set a world record, and we'll tell you what world record that is. We've got the first CBD oil dispensary opening up in Florida to tell you about, and interesting, mysterious news about one of the most powerful and influential people in the marijuana industry in the state of Colorado, who has suddenly departed his position. We'll tell you who it is and what the organization is doing to make up for the lack of this person. Then stay tuned for Hour 2, Toker Talk Radio. We've got some clips of our good friend Sanho Tree, who is a public policy fellow and a brilliant man, who recently was in a televised debate with Kevin Sabet. So we'll have some highlights of that because that's always fun to listen to. And we're going to go over that Arizona, some more of those Arizona opposition arguments to marijuana legalization. Sit back, load a bowl, smoke it up. We got 2 hours of marijuana coming at you now.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
seed to sale, clicks to conversions, and more. You're listening to the Cannabis Radio Network.
While the feds and state are doing their dance, you still need to transact business and manage your cash. Go professional and let your customers pay with PayQuick. They pay you and they earn rewards points. PayQuick connects to your bank account for free and secures all of your transactions. And with PayQuick, you can pay your producers and processors for free. Plus, it pays to have it because it makes depositing your cash safe and so easy. No cops, no crooks, just compliance and comfort, knowing you have your cannabis business in check with PayQuick. PayQuick, the safe and easy way to pay. PayQuick.com.
Tommy Chong is ready to cut through the smoke and change the tone of Tilk Radio.
During Dance with the Stars, I started feeling discomfort. Yeah. And not only that, I was doing these old man smells. And it was kind of embarrassing because, all the Dancing with the Stars crew, cast and crew, they were all young kids. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, this old guy would come along and do one of those silent farts, that you don't know you're doing it. Yeah. And all of a sudden you smell, and everybody go, what the hell smells? And, it was me. And so I'd scurry off to the bathroom, and that's when I knew that there was something wrong.
The Tommy Chong Podcast, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome to my world.
You're listening to Radical Russ on the Russ Belville Show.
Get.Buzz. .Buzz is the internet platform that fuels community interest, excitement, and new experiences. .Buzz is the premier online destination for internet users seeking the latest news on a variety of topics. .Buzz appeals to groups active in blogging, communications, journalism, advertising, and marketing. .Buzz offers registrants a stronger alternative to the shrinking namespace of existing top-level domain names, such as .com, .net, and .org. Get your name now at get.buzz.
It's time for the Cannabis Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Cannabis Radio News is now available exclusively at CannabisRadio.com. Now your marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is Cannabis Radio News.
This is your Cannabis Radio News for Wednesday, July 20th, 2016. Boston, Massachusetts. A new poll shows that Massachusetts may be the least likely of the 5 states voting to pass a marijuana legalization initiative this November. Gravis Marketing for Jobs First, a conservative political action committee, found that 51% of voters oppose Question 4, the initiative to regulate marijuana like alcohol. 41% support the measure, and another 9% are undecided. Republican Governor Charlie Baker, one of the nation's most popular governors, is expected to win re-election in 2018, according to the poll. Baker was joined by the Speaker of the House, Robert DeLeo, and Boston Mayor Marty Walsh in publicly opposing the measure. Phoenix, Arizona. An Arizona judge has set August 12th as the date to hear a challenge by anti-marijuana campaigners to strike a legalization initiative from the November ballot. Maricopa County Superior Court Judge Joe Lynn Gentry will hold the hearing concerning a suit from Arizonans for Responsible Drug Policy, a group made up of mostly law enforcement and rehab opposed to legalization. Attorney Brett Johnson claims that the summary of the initiative as one that, quote, regulates marijuana like alcohol, end quote, is flawed. The initiative requires employers to prove workers were impaired by marijuana use before firing them, which Johnson says is quite different than how alcohol is treated. Johnson also points to the initiative's license guarantees for existing medical marijuana dispensaries as differing from alcohol policy. Legalization spokesperson Corey Langhofer called Johnson's examples, quote, immaterial, end quote, and said the 100-word summary is in no way fraudulent. Denver, Colorado. The Colorado State Medical Board has suspended the licenses of 4 doctors over allegations they routinely recommended massive plant count limits for medical marijuana grows. The 4 doctors are accused of writing recommendations for over 1,500 patients that allow them up to 75 cannabis plants each. 6 plants are the standard limit for medical marijuana patients in Colorado under the Constitution, but doctors may recommend more plants if medically necessary. Patient advocates argue that the sickest patients need greater limits to produce oils and tinctures, but law enforcement believes the large grows are merely cover for illicit marijuana trafficking activity. The state generally recommends investigation of doctors who make recommendations for more plants to over 30% of their medical marijuana patients. New York, New York. Former running back Ricky Williams says he went through at least 500 drug tests during his 11-year NFL career. The 1998 Heisman Trophy winner at Texas and first-round draft pick by New Orleans in 1999 tells Sports Illustrated in a film to be released on SI.com on Wednesday that he, quote, might have the world record for the most times drug tested, end quote. Williams, who also played for Miami and Baltimore, sat out the 2006 season while suspended by the league for violating the substance abuse policy. Ricky's wife, Kristen, outlines in the film how lax NFL testing standards were, including when a tester left the samples at the Williams' house to go get stickers for identifying them. In the film entitled Ricky Williams Takes the High Road, Williams also discusses the prevalence of marijuana use in the NFL today and its potential as a medicinal tool. Tallahassee, Florida. Tallahassee grower and dispensary Trulieve will be the first medical marijuana facility in the state of Florida to open its doors for the sale of CBD oil. Florida is one of 16 states, mostly in the South, that allow the use of non-psychoactive cannabis oil for the treatment of childhood epilepsy. Florida's Trulieve will be the only outlet for CBD oil in any of these states. While a few other states are working on providing access, most require patients of the epileptic child to acquire the oil from other states like Colorado, then smuggle it back to their home state in violation of federal law. Another new Florida law called Right to Try will allow terminally ill patients to use cannabis products with psychoactive THC. Trulieve says they'll make those products available in August. Denver, Colorado. Mystery surrounds the sudden departure of Executive Director Mike Elliott from the Marijuana Industry Group. Elliott helped to craft the rules and regulations for the marijuana industry in the state of Colorado as his organization transitioned from the medical marijuana industry group. This has been your Cannabis Radio News for Wednesday, July 20th, 2016. I'm Russ Belville.
Every strain, every sale, every medical study. Keep it right here on the Cannabis Radio Network.
Play as Ted Growing, expelled botany sophomore and the biggest grower in town, only on Weed Firm Replanted. Available on the App Store and Google Play.
It's a lot of work being the biggest grower in town. Maintaining a room full of plants while dealing with a slew of eccentric customers? From a hardcore partier to the curious neighbor next door.
Is anybody home?
Help me expand my bud business by unlocking new strains, customizing my grow room, and completing challenges that you can't get enough of. Grow your empire so big you can see it from space. Low on funds? Don't worry. Weed Firm Replanted is free to download.
Download Weed Firm Replanted for free on the App Store and Google Play today. Get growing, Mr. Growing.
NORMAL stands for Responsible Adult Cannabis Use. If cannabis use is causing problems in your life, consider taking a break or seeking medical assistance. Consider ceasing cannabis use if you have a family history of mental illness. Don't drive or operate heavy machinery while impaired by cannabis use. Cannabis use is not without risks, even though the risks may be far less than those posed by legal drugs. The Russ Belville Show. We're as much like Cheech and Chong as ordinary Americans are like the Three Stooges. Hey, Mo!
Coming soon to a city near you, Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. Get all your cannabis accounting, legal, and compliance questions answered by their knowledgeable panel of industry experts who want to help your canna business boom. Whether you're a grower, dispensary operator, or a newcomer to the field, your canna business needs Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. For information on upcoming events, visit CannabisFinanceBootCamp.com.
The world of cannabis is evolving at a frenetic pace. The Russ Belville Show gets behind the headlines to take a deeper look at breaking news in our Cannabis Focus.
Today in the Cannabis Focus, we take a look at one of our favorite marijuana celebrities out there, and that would be 84-year-old Willie Nelson. Is he 84 or is he 83? Somewhere up there. Anyway, Willie Nelson has his new cannabis brand, Willie's Reserve, and he's going to begin selling it. It's going to finally start hitting the shelves this month in the state of Washington, and in August it will be on the shelves in Colorado. This is just breaking news about an hour ago. It's coming from thecannabist.co. Ricardo Baca out there and the cannabis staff got this news exclusively from Willie's people. They say that it will coincide with Nelson's previously scheduled tour stops at Merrymore Park in Redmond, Washington on July 23rd, and Fiddler's Green Amphitheater in Greenwood Village, Colorado on July 30th. Willie Nelson in the press materials says, quote, "I've smoked enough and I want to give back. Now that legalization is spreading across the country, there's a great opportunity to build a company that can help a lot of people," end quote. Now, here is the initial list of places where you'll be able to find Willie's Reserve cannabis in Washington State. Buddy's in Renton, Washington will be carrying it. The Evergreen Market, Fweedom, F-W-E-E-D-O-M, Fweedom, makes me feel like Elmer Fudd. Greenside Recreational, Gypsy Greens, Urban Elements, and Nimbin Pot Shop. Those are the Washington State outlets that will first have Willie's Reserve. Again, the list is Buddies of Renton, the Evergreen Market, Fweedom, Greenside Recreational, Gypsy Greens, Urban Elements, and Nimbin Pot Shop. Now, they don't have a list yet of where the brand will be sold in Colorado. They're still working on that for August. Now, understand, of course, that this weed isn't being grown by Willie Nelson or Willie's people or Willie's particular grower. Since cannabis is still a Schedule I drug federally, it has to be grown in each state that it's going to be sold in. So this is going to be interesting because Willie's Reserve that you buy in Washington State will be weed that was grown in Washington. And Willie's Reserve that you get in Colorado will be weed that was grown in Colorado. And this is not just Willie Nelson. I mean, Snoop Dogg has his brand, Leafs by Snoop, and other guys have their brands, and they're doing the same thing. They're partnering with existing licensed marijuana growers in these states. It's all they can do. But it's not just that they're taking whatever weed is being currently grown and slapping Willie's name on it. According to the press materials, quote, "Willie has consulted with horticulturalists and cannabis farmers to assure any product labeled Willie's Reserve will maintain a standard worthy of his name." Okay, so, but that still, it opens up a lot of questions. Like, I want to know which strains are going to be sold under Willie's Reserve, and will that be consistent across the states? For example, if Willie's Reserve comes in, a Chem Dog, a Sour Diesel, and a Trainwreck in Washington, is it going to be those same three strains of Willie's Reserve that you get in Colorado, or will it vary? This is going to be very interesting because we find even when you have two different growers selling the same strain, you oftentimes end up with a very different product. And I wonder just how much celebrity branding can really take root in the marijuana world. It's like, Willie's Reserve is not going to be any different marijuana than other great strains of marijuana you'll be able to buy in Washington State. What is going to give it the extra panache, the extra flavor? Just having Willie's name on it? This reminds me in the alcohol industry of how you get rappers and other stars who start their own vodka line or their own wine label. And it really doesn't matter who the celebrity is that's on the label. Is the product itself any good? I suppose Willie's Reserve is something that, folks that are new to marijuana or who want that thrill of giving back to Willie Nelson or having a piece of Willie Nelson somehow as a part of them. But I'm thinking for long-time, heavy-duty cannabis consumers, it's the price and the quality that are going to matter more than the name of the person who's lent their brand to it. At least I hope so. I hope that cannabis consumers maintain that sort of skepticism that we've always naturally had in evaluating some of these celebrity brands. And this is not to cast aspersions on Willie Nelson by any means. If anybody deserves to make a buck off his name when it comes to marijuana, I think Willie Nelson, Snoop Dogg, and Tommy Chong have paid the price and put their money where their mouth is.
I'm not worthy! I'm not worthy!
Yeah, really, any one of these celebrities who, prior to legalization was standing up for legalization and was vocal and open about it, I got no problem with them, lending their brand name out. I think that's great. I'll take that over any of these Yale MBAs that are jumping into the green rush just because there's money there. We're going to take a break. When we come back, a new study says pot makes you mellow. No shit.
We have your smoking section right here. This is the Cannabis Radio Network.
Hi, I'm Montel Williams. Most of you know me as a talk show host, but I'm also an author, actor, single father of 4, avid snowboarder, and I'm also a medical marijuana patient. Living with multiple sclerosis, I'm in pain every day. Medical marijuana is my last resort, and it helps me when all other drugs have failed. If you'd like more information about medical marijuana, you can contact the Marijuana Policy Project at mpp.org or call 1-877-JOIN-MPP.
Tommy Chong is ready to cut through the smoke and change the tone of Tilk Radio.
All you have to do is decriminalize. We don't need a government regulation to tell us this is good pot, that's bad pot. We don't need any of that.
The Tommy Chong Podcast, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome to my world.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show and 420 Radio.
Promoting the end of adult cannabis prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It's even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more on this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
Today in the Drug War Data Mines, we take a look at a study coming out of the Netherlands that was just published in the journal Psychopharmacology, and it asks a very interesting, if not kind of obvious question. What happens to people when they smoke pot versus drinking alcohol when it comes to aggression? Now, I think anyone out there listening to me right now already knows the answer. Pot makes you mellow, and booze makes you aggro. This is just common sense, right? Well, researchers don't always like to just take common sense at face value. It's always worth asking these questions, applying some scientific methods, some experimentation, and determining if these things are really true. And so on this study, first of all, they've already noted that there's numerous studies about alcohol and its contribution to aggression. It's a harmful drug as far as it being poisonous, toxic, detrimental to most of your organs, impairs driving ability more than just about any other drug out there. Booze is the worst, and it's a factor in about 40% of the violent crimes that occur in this country. So we know there's a link between alcohol and aggression. That's not been doubted. But the question was about cannabis and aggression. Now, anecdotally, we'll tell you, you smoke pot, you get mellow. People know that. But there have been studies on this, a few studies on this, and they've been kind of mixed. There have been some studies that say, yeah, marijuana makes you relaxed, makes you mellow. But there's some other studies that show that it can cause, in some people, anxiety and paranoia. And those can both lead to aggressive activity. And every now and then you get these reports out of Colorado where, somebody's gone off the deep end on an edible or something like that and have been acting aggressively. So this was a question worth asking, and these researchers at the, in the Netherlands, I don't know which university they were with, did a randomly controlled trial. And they brought in 20 heavy drinkers, 3 drinks a day for men, 2 drinks a day for women, at least. 21 heavy marijuana users, people that smoke 3 times a week or more, and 20 controls who didn't really use either of those drugs much at all. Okay, so you got an equal amount of each, about 20, 21, and 20. So they get the drinkers drunk. They get them up to 0.08 blood alcohol, okay, your driving threshold, right? And then they get the marijuana users high, and they did it in a standardized way. This was pretty cool. They standardized this by giving them 300 micrograms of THC per kilogram of body weight through a vaporizer. So everybody was getting equally high at the same rate, okay? And then, of course, the control group, they don't get to do anything. They're the control group. So they made all 3 of these groups, the drunk group, the high group, and the control group, take these tests that are designed to make you aggressive, that are designed to annoy you, basically. The first one is a association test with positive and negative words depicting aggressive and violent behavior. The second test is a computer game where they win money by pressing buttons against adversaries. And a third test, was that the test? Yeah, a couple of the tests. So what they did is they measured the aggression before and after the test. Okay. And, asking them on a 100-point scale, how aggressive do you feel? Then a week later, they had all 3 groups do the test again, but had them do it all sober. Okay. So our first test has the highs versus the drunks versus the controls. Then the week later, the highs, the drunks, and the controls do the same test, but they're all sober at the same time. And what they found was, quote, alcohol intoxication increased subjective aggression in the alcohol group, end quote. In other words, they got more aggressive when they were drunk and less than they were sober. For the tokers, they found the tokers became less aggressive when they were high. And this was a consistent finding through self-assessments. The drunks rated themselves more aggressive and in the tests were found to be more aggressive. The tokers were less aggressive and rated themselves as being less aggressive. The researchers concluded, quote, the results in the present study support the hypothesis that acute alcohol intoxication increases feelings of aggression and that acute cannabis intoxication reduces feelings of aggression, end quote. So this is not surprising to us. We know this from dozens and dozens and dozens of years and hundreds and thousands and millions of anecdotal stories that we just get mellow when we smoke. We know this. We know this to be a fact. And there's other research that kind of backs this up as well. In 2014, marijuana use among couples was linked to lowered rates of domestic violence. In the 1980s, they did one of those shock your partner type of studies. And the more stoned the test subjects were, the less interested they were in zapping other people. And it makes you wonder, and it makes you think about why our government and why people in power are so resistant to marijuana legalization. And I've got to think that if you're trying to maintain a military-industrial complex and you need to rile up a whole bunch of young men with patriotism to join your army to fight for your corporate profits, beer is going to make that easier, and weed is going to make that harder. The more we learn that cannabis leads to less aggression, more feelings of empathy and introspection, the more obvious it becomes as to why they fought so hard to keep it illegal. All right, stay tuned. We're going to take a break. Coming back on the next half of the hour with our Government at Work segment, California patients and their fears of Prop 64.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Earn your PhD in THC monetization. with CannabisRadio.com. Don't be late.
While the feds and state are doing their dance, you still need to transact business and manage your cash. Go professional and let your customers pay with PayQuick. They pay you and they earn rewards points. PayQuick connects to your bank account for free and secures all of your transactions. And with PayQuick, you can pay your producers and processors for free. Plus, it pays to have it because it makes depositing your cash safe and so easy. No cops, no crooks, just compliance and comfort, knowing you have your cannabis business in check with PayQuick. PayQuick, the safe and easy way to pay. PayQuick.com.
It's time for Cannabis Facts about Alzheimer's from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A new Florida study in the journal Molecular and Cellular Neuroscience found that cannabis promotes the growth of healthy new brain tissue. It can slow the effects of Alzheimer's and may in fact be able to halt it entirely. A long-term study by Ohio State University's Professor Gary Wenk concludes that people who regularly use marijuana get Alzheimer's at a much lower rate than others. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
I opted for convenience to use my personal email account.
Okay, maybe you're high too.
Coming soon to a city near you, Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. Get all your cannabis accounting, legal, and compliance questions answered by their knowledgeable panel of industry experts who want to help your cannabis boom. Whether you're a grower, dispensary operator, or a newcomer to the field, your cannabis needs Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. For information on upcoming events, visit CannabisFinanceBootCamp.com.
Reforming America's marijuana prohibition laws takes education, lobbying, and voting. From Washington, D.C. to your state capital to your city hall, marijuana law reform involves all levels of civic life. Learn how you can make your impact with elected officials as we take a look at our government at work.
Today in Government at Work, I want to take a look at Proposition 64 in California, also known as the Adult Use of Marijuana Act. And there was a story came out in the Orange County Register, also reprinted in the San Jose Mercury News, that asks the question, what happens to medical marijuana if recreational use becomes legal in California? Now, let's recall all the way back to 1996 when California passed the Compassionate Use Act. I've been told by Chris Conrad, who was there back in the day, along with Dennis Perrone and Brownie Mary and Jack Harrer, when they were putting together the Compassionate Use Act. And a lot of people don't know this, but Jack Harrer was against Prop 215 when it was first announced. He was against medical marijuana. And the reason he was against it is that he worried that legalizing marijuana just for one select group of people would lead them to want to protect their own particular use. It's something that I've crystallized in a label I call I Got's Mine syndrome. And that's what we've seen happen. Jack was absolutely prescient on this. We saw it in 2010 as the entrenched medical marijuana industry, growers, and patients rebelled against legalization and helped to defeat Prop 19. Now, we're in better shape this time because the polls are showing about 60% support in California for Prop 64. But as this story tells us, there's still a lot of fear out there among the patient community, and I think it's something that we need to work to address. The story starts with a woman named Alexandra Rice. She's a lupus and depression patient, uses medical marijuana, and she's 21. And here's her quote. Now, first of all, let's take the fact that she's 21 means that she's never not known marijuana to be medical. If she is 21 years old, then she was born in 1995. Right? So she does not remember California not having medical marijuana. She has never had to live with the fear that she was going to be arrested and have her life turned upside down for her use of marijuana. She has been protected all her life from arrest and incarceration for her use of medical marijuana. So let's just understand her perspective before we, get too upset at her or demonize her or anything. This is her perspective. It's a valid perspective for millennials in California. They see, if they're a patient, they think things are pretty good. Hey, you pay your $40, $50 to a doc in the box, you get your recommendation letter, you go shop at your dispensaries, you grow your plants, things are cool. Why mess that up? But here's a part of her quote in this story that really bothered me. Here's her quote. If it is legalized, more people who don't respect it and just want to get high are going to take advantage of that, and people who genuinely need it as medicine will be misplaced and thrown to the side. End quote. Well, wait a minute. You can't have it both ways, patients. I hear from so many patient advocates that say, well, all use is medical. All use is medical. Even the people who are getting high are really doing it for medical purposes. Well, if that's the case, if you really believe all use is medical, then there is no separation between the people who don't respect it and just want to get high versus the people who genuinely need it as medicine. As far as you believe, we all genuinely need it as medicine, don't we? Yeah, it seems awfully convenient to me sometimes how when it suits them, all use is medical and we're all the same and we're all in this together. But when we want to have our rights to not be arrested, when we want to be able to go in to shop at pot shops, suddenly there's a distinction now. Suddenly there's a separation between the patients and us criminals, right? So that really bothered me. People who genuinely need it as medicine will be misplaced and thrown to the side. People who don't respect it and just want to get high are going to take advantage. Look, in California right now, if you don't respect it and just want to get high, you can go to the doc in the box. You can lie about your anxiety and go shop at the dispensaries now. How is it going to change the economics of the market any than what you've got now? Robert Taft, who's a longtime medical marijuana advocate, owns a dispensary in Santa Ana, says, quote, "I'm completely on the fence about it," end quote. They fear that the proposition will impose stricter regulations that would affect where they could consume marijuana and how much marijuana they can grow. Despite the fact that you're still permitted, medical patients will still be able to smoke medical marijuana any place tobacco smoking is allowed, while us recreational consumers would be busted. I think it's a $250 fine for smoking any place tobacco is non-smoking places, I should say. Recreational consumers limited to 6 plants, but the medical consumers, medical patients like Alexander Rice would still be allowed to cultivate up to 100 square feet of plants. This actually broadens the rights for medical marijuana patients in that it protects their parental rights from being changed or interrupted due to their use of cannabis. We don't get that protection for the recreational users, mind you, just for the medical ones. But to tell you the truth, the real thing that they're upset about is the idea that it's going to be taxed. And in the initiative, there is going to be a 15% tax or 15% sales tax, and then at the cultivation site, $9.25 an ounce for flower. And those taxes will still be charged to patients. The only tax patients get out of is California sales tax. And so this is what's got them concerned, because a lot of these patients have to use a whole lot of medicine, and they're afraid that their prices are going to go way up because of this tax. But I've been checking the California dispensary prices. You can find these online. And I consistently find cheaper prices for marijuana in Washington state, where marijuana is legal, and taxed at 37% than I find in the current California dispensaries now. So this idea that legalization is going to drastically raise the prices because of these taxes being added on doesn't seem to me to be a legitimate concern. Maybe in the short term, maybe when they first roll this out, like they did in Washington, they first rolled it out, the prices were too high, $35, $30 a gram, that kind of stuff. But I sincerely believe with the size, the scale of the California grow industry let loose as a legal industry is going to crash the price of marijuana in California so greatly that even when you add a 15% sales tax and a $9.25 per ounce excise tax, marijuana is going to be cheaper legal than it currently is medical. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. You come talk to me in 2 years. Well, let's mark down the prices of California marijuana right now and then come back in 2 years after the legal market's been kicking it for a while. This is going to be a huge benefit for patients. Your medicine is going to become more accessible, more plentiful, more affordable under legalization. This idea that patients will be pushed off to the side. Look, as we move into legalization, why you use marijuana will not determine what kind of customer you are. How much marijuana you use and how often will determine what kind of customer you are. You'll just be a high volume customer. It doesn't matter whether you're sick or whether you just like to smoke pot and get high all the time. You'll be treated as a high volume customer. Legalization always beats prohibition. Vote yes on Prop 64 in California. When we return, ganja and the gridiron, a look at the NFL and medical marijuana.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Forwarding the cause of legalization and research of the growing cannabis industry, one podcast at a time. The Cannabis Radio Network.
Great websites today need expert web design and development and need to be e-commerce ready and mobile friendly. But building a marketable and profitable website can be an uphill climb. Ready to make your new website or replace your existing website? Think Orange as the new way to get in the black. Orange Hill Development works with Fortune 500 companies and offer the same top quality development service at a fraction of what other providers charge. Brands like Absolute, Carlsberg, and Nestea trust Orange Hill Development. Find out why you should trust your website with Orange Hill. Contact Orange Hill for a consultation today at orangehilldevelopment.com.
I'm Radical Russ from the Russ Belville Show.
We're here with Sir Richard Branson.
Far more damage has been done to people by the current approach.
Jim McMahon.
A lot of the coaches are old school. He used to just yell at us, "Oh, you bunch of pot smokers."
John Popper on the telephone.
I think in the 60s there was that kind of, the bigotry wasn't so common.
It's the Russ Belville Show, the NPR of POT, weekdays live at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific, exclusively on CannabisRadio.com.
The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
Don't want to spend money on a night out, but don't know what to do other than watching TV or playing video games? Consider playing guitar, bass, banjo, or mandolin. The instrument will give you hours of entertainment with friends with minimal expense. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant.
Today in the rant, I want to talk about ganja and the gridiron because the NFL has a marijuana problem, and that's not allowing its use by the players when it could be the best medicine for them. Eugene Monroe was, until recently, an offensive tackle for the Baltimore Ravens of the NFL. Linemen like him protect the quarterback and block for runners. They are guaranteed to be hit on nearly every play. They are the most important part of a football team, yet they get the least fanfare of any position played. Normally, you'd never hear about Eugene Monroe in the headlines. Except that Eugene Monroe is an active NFL player calling for the league to open up to medical marijuana use by its players. Back in March, Monroe unloaded on the league for its ban on medical marijuana. Quote, "Let's research how cannabinoids may help curb traumatic brain injury," he wrote on Twitter, adding, "Smoking weed just may protect your brain," end quote. Monroe even called out the commissioner of the league, Roger Goodell, for, quote, "lying to me at the Super Bowl over the league's stance that, quote, there's no medical versus recreational distinction," end quote. Since then, Monroe has contributed $80,000 for medical marijuana research and continued speaking out for more tolerance from the league. As a reward for his stance, the Baltimore Ravens first distanced themselves from him in the media, then dropped him from the team. Monroe, a talented player in a key position, still hasn't signed with another team as of press time. Despite 20 of its 32 teams playing in states where medical marijuana is now legal, the NFL still considers it a banned substance for its players. Now, players are beginning to fight back and demand the NFL end its ban on medical cannabis use. Evidence of marijuana's efficacy in treating head trauma and chronic pain is emerging. Players are increasingly aware of the long-term health effects of opioid painkillers and want a safer herbal option. Jim McMahon was the punky QB who led the 1985 Chicago Bears to victory in Super Bowl 20. Players were smoking pot back then, but weren't as informed on its medical use, McMahon told me at a recent marijuana conference in Fort Worth, Texas. Quote, "Coaches used to just yell at us," McMahon said. "You bunch of pot smokers, that's why you need water," end quote. Now, McMahon's former coach, Mike Ditka, has come around to supporting medical marijuana access for players. He's joined a group called the Gridiron Cannabis Coalition that consists of players, coaches, doctors, and others seeking to educate the NFL about the potential of medical cannabis in the league. Quote, "It definitely helps for me," McMahon continued, "because I'll get shooting pains. I'll go weeks at a time not getting out of bed, and that's when I know I've got to go back and see the doc," end quote. McMahon is suffering from many chronic pain conditions thanks to years of punishing hits. Chief among them is head and neck pain brought about from countless concussions, or as McMahon puts it, getting your bell rung, a euphemism used by football coaches all across the country at every level to discount the severity of head trauma. When your brain smashes up against your skull, there is a tearing and shearing of brain tissue that has been named chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE. It's a disease that can only be diagnosed via autopsy and was first discovered by Dr. Bennett Omalu in 2002. Will Smith played Dr. Omalu in the movie Concussion, which failed at the box office, but succinctly portrayed the battle to get the NFL to address the issue. Sufferers of CTE experience terrible pain, depression, suicidal ideation, and psychotic breaks. Omalu first discovered CTE in the brain of Hall of Famer Mike Webster, the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive lineman who battled bouts of rage and depression. 10 years later, CTE was found in the brain of Jovan Belcher, a linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs, who murdered his girlfriend and shot himself in front of his coaches in 2012. CTE also claimed Hall of Fame linebacker Junior Seau, who committed suicide that same year. Seau shot himself in the chest like Chicago Bears safety Dave Duerson had done the year before. Duerson had left a note asking for his brain to be autopsied, and CTE was found. So far, over 90 deceased NFL players have been found to have suffered from CTE. How concussions proceed into full-blown CTE is not yet well understood. What is beginning to be understood, however, is how cannabis may be the best preventative measure for the effects of concussion in the first place. Following a concussion, there is a post-concussion syndrome that causes headaches, dizziness, irritability, insomnia, memory problems, and sensitivity to noise and light. The symptoms can develop within the first week following the concussion and can last 3 months to a year or longer. Recent research has shown that cannabidiol, or CBD, one of the non-psychoactive constituents of cannabis, provides a neuroprotective effect against brain damage from concussion. Use of CBD has also been shown to reduce brain swelling and inflammation after concussion. But as the research continues to validate what many players know from trial and error, the NFL refuses to budge on its anti-marijuana policies. Commissioner Goodell last February told reporters, quote, "It's an NFL policy and we believe it's the correct policy for now in the best interest of our players and the long-term health of our players," end quote. When pressed by reporters about players like Jim McMahon speaking out for medical cannabis and the recent advances in research on cannabis and concussion, Goodell demurred, saying, quote, "I don't distinguish between the medical marijuana and marijuana issue in the context of my previous answer. Yes, I agree there have been changes, but not significant enough changes that our medical personnel have changed their view," end quote. Quote, "For Roger Goodell to say we're following the science, they need to lead the science," end quote, said Marvin Washington, a former defensive end for the New York Jets. Quote, "They need to research this," end quote. Washington then proceeded to list the painkillers, the naproxen, the OxyContin, the Percocets, that are handed out by NFL team doctors instead of, quote, "something that's natural, something that has no negative side effects and no addiction problems," end quote. In 2014, the NFL recently settled a multi-million-dollar lawsuit by over 4,500 players over the issue of concussion. The players claimed the league had failed to inform the players of the true dangers involved. The settlement metes out some compensation for the players, but amounted to a small fraction of the $10 billion business that is the NFL. Even if an NFL player avoids a concussion, there's no way he can avoid pain. For NFL teams, keeping the player on the field is paramount. NFL team doctors know this and supply their players with a litany of powerful and addictive opioid painkillers to address their injuries. Back in 1996, legendary former Green Bay Packers quarterback Brett Favre was one of the most high-profile players to publicly admit to a problem with opioid painkiller addiction. By 2014, former linebacker Scott Fujita was telling the Washington Post that team doctors gave him, quote, "the craziest big pill bottle you've ever seen," end quote, full of at least 125 Percocets. Former offensive lineman Rex Hadnot explained how he received Toradol injections, a powerful anti-inflammatory, once a week for 9 years. The FDA recommends using Toradol no more than 5 days due to the risk of kidney damage. Now, over 1,500 former players have filed a class action lawsuit that claims, quote, "NFL teams and their training staffs dispensed powerful drugs while misleading them about the health risks," end quote, and that NFL team doctors, quote, "were routinely and indiscriminately giving out powerful painkillers, often without prescriptions or even a cursory exam, to mask pain and injuries and get players back on the field without regard for their long-term health," end quote. The suit has survived an initial motion to dismiss by the NFL. The NFL keeps marijuana on its banned substances list not because it is a performance-enhancing drug, but merely because it is still a federally illegal drug. The NFL markets heavily to young people and doesn't want to be portrayed as soft on drugs. It's also no coincidence that the biggest advertisers on the NFL games include beer and pharmaceutical companies that would face direct competition from greater access to marijuana. For years, the league maintained one of the strictest limits for drug testing marijuana among its players. Just 15 nanograms of marijuana metabolite in a urine sample was enough to fail the test. In 2014, The league upped the limit to 35 nanograms. Regardless, both these minute amounts of metabolite can be detected in cannabis consumers days or even weeks after the effect of cannabis has worn off. Other sports leagues have recognized this and use a higher metabolite limit in their testing. Major League Baseball requires 50 nanograms for a failed test. The World Anti-Doping Agency, which tests Olympic athletes, raised its threshold from 15 nanograms to 150, arguing that that would help prevent catching athletes who weren't actually high during competition. And the National Hockey League doesn't even test for marijuana metabolites. Failing the NFL's drug test has serious consequences for a player. This year, the annual testing began on April 20th, yes, 420, and continued through August 9th. Once a player passes that one annual test, he is unlikely to be tested again unless he raises a red flag through a marijuana arrest or a public incident. Even joking on Twitter about the 420 holiday can earn a player a random request for a drug test sample, as Indianapolis Colts punter Pat McAfee found out this year on 421. The NFL substance abuse policy, agreed to by the NFL Players Association and in effect until 2021, specifies a series of increasing penalties for marijuana test failures, beginning with a mandatory substance abuse program for first-time offenders. Subsequent offenses earn suspensions and loss of pay, like the Denver Broncos Super Bowl MVP defensive end Von Miller, who sat out 6 games in 2013, and the 10 games then league-leading Cleveland Browns wide receiver Josh Gordon sat out in 2014. The NFL's policy also harms the careers of athletes coming out of college before they've even set foot on the gridiron. Some coaches still see marijuana use as a character issue and a mark of an inferior player. Laramie Tunsil, a potential number 1 draft choice, who played offensive tackle at Ole Miss, saw his draft position plummet all the way down from number 1 to number 13 this year, meaning the difference of millions of dollars in his NFL contract. In a sense, marijuana testing is a mechanism for getting some highly talented players at cheaper prices, like future Hall of Fame former Minnesota Vikings wide receiver Randy Moss, who also saw his draft stock drop following publicized marijuana incidents in college. Moss recently commented on Tunsil's fall to CBS Sports, saying, quote, "The NFL just needs to loosen up the rules, and that, quote, when you are caught on camera smoking something, that's not a character issue. I think if a guy out there is driving under the influence, beating women, or doing something that will really hurt others, that's where you have to be able to draw the line," end quote. For some players, they'll make the choice to try synthetic marijuana. These dangerous concoctions are prized for their ability to provide the high without failing the drug test, which doesn't detect the synthetic metabolites. But these untested drugs for lab use only create a wide range of reactions, from a pleasant high to psychotic episodes. Some high-profile incidents featuring players using synthetic pot, including New England Patriots defensive end Chandler Jones, who stumbled into a police station early in the morning this January, complaining of a bad reaction to the drug. The time has come for the NFL to adopt a sensible policy on cannabis use by its players. With possibly 9 states voting on legalization or medical marijuana this fall, the NFL could find itself with 3/4 of its teams playing in medical marijuana states and 1/4 of its teams playing in legal marijuana states. The country could have 30 medical marijuana states and 9 adult legalization states by the time the next Super Bowl is played. With concern over concussion and CTE, painkillers and addiction, and needlessly affecting the careers of dozens of young men over marijuana, a substance a majority of Americans in 10 straight polls have agreed should be legal, the NFL is actively harming its players by not offering the safer alternative of cannabis. That's all the time we got for today. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for Hour 2. Toker Talk Radio is next. For everyone here at CannabisRadio.com, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry